the Hudson Library and Historical Society's Adult Program Series presents award-winning WKSU 89.7 NPR reporter Kabir Bhatia, speaking with the co-author of Cleveland TV Tales, Stories from the Early Days of Local Television. Longtime local radio and TV personality Mike Olszewski, with surprising tales and wonderful memories of the days when our home television was just 3 channels. Recorded at the Hudson Library's Flood Meeting Room on April 2nd, 2015.
Back to the show. I'm pleased to welcome a wonderful author as part of a new kind of series that we're going to start doing with Kabir Bhatia. And you probably know him from WKSU. He'll talk a little bit more about the series of programs that he'll be doing. We have something coming up in June, and he just confirmed it, so I'll let him give you more descriptions about that. But this is the first of that series where he'll be interviewing really interesting speakers. And our very interesting speaker today is Mike, I knew I was going to get this wrong, Mike Olszewski. Shevsky. He said no F. He's a veteran Cleveland radio and television personality, best known for his work at the legendary WMMS. He also has hosted and produced programs for there's a lot of letters here, WNCX, FM, WKNR, AM, WOIO TV, WUAB TV, and other stations. Nationally, he's hosted the Source Report for NBC Radio's Young Adult Network, and internationally, he's reported for Voice of America. Please welcome Mike and Kabir.
Thank you. Okay, you can all hear me. Oh, good. Have a seat.
I think I will. Thank you. Hi, everybody.
You know, I'm going to cross. You're never supposed to do this, but I have to grab my information.
Hey, that's okay. There you go. There you go.
So, welcome to Hudson. Thank you for coming.
I'm familiar with this library. I've been here many times. So.
And this is the book, your most recent book.
Yeah.
And just sort of to let the cat out of the bag, you were telling me that this came out last fall?
Yeah, it came out last October, actually Halloween weekend. Right. And did very well, as a matter of fact. So
you've already submitted what?
The sequel went in this week. And apparently, it's funny because after we had published this book, everybody in TV came forward and said, you know, I've got a story for you. And we've got some wonderful stories as well. You know, before we begin, I'd like to point something out here. Don't let her youthful looks deceive you. We actually have another TV pioneer here in the audience. Remember the Mike Douglas show? Terry Williams was the publicist. She's back there, and let's have a hand for Terry. Did a lot of time in radio as well. It's great to have you here, Terry. Thank you very much.
Pretty amazing.
Yeah.
She could maybe come up later and tell us about Mad Men, because that's going to be the next program.
I think so. Yeah, that's a great idea. Yeah. There you go. Sure.
So to get to this book, you said there's so many stories. And we have to keep it family safe here. Okay. So you have to tone down the Goulardi stories, maybe.
Yeah, they look better.
But starting with him, he's one of the titans of Cleveland TV. Maybe just talk about the impact and you know, some of the, you said that the ratings and the crime rate sort of went inversely proportional.
They corresponded, yeah. You know, Ernie Anderson did not necessarily want to be Goulardi because he had a very good voiceover career going on for many years. And they said, listen, we got this idea. We want to do this shock theater. And actually, Universal Pictures had put out a package of their Frankenstein, Mummy, things like that. And they said, let's syndicate this to all the TV stations, because TV was very young at that time. Remember, when they did that, TV was only maybe 12, 13 years old in Cleveland. At any rate, they went to Ernie Anderson, and they said, listen, you've hosted these movies before, if you remember Ernie's Place. We'll get to that in a second. Disaster. At any rate, they said, we'd like you to be a horror host. He said, I got a voiceover career. Come on, I got the Ohio Bell account. I can't do that. And they said, it's an extra $75 a week. He said, I'll do that. And it's funny because he said, but I don't want anybody to know what I look like. So he pasted on a phony beard and, you know, the glasses and all that stuff. The very first shows, he used an accent. It didn't work. And after a while, he just became Ernie Anderson. The interesting thing was he became so popular so quickly that when Ghoulardi was on the air, the crime rate dropped 50%. That's because the victims and the criminals stayed off the street. And you know, the thing was, there's a few people here that are old enough to remember Ghoulardi. If you didn't see Ghoulardi on Friday, don't go to school on Monday. You got nothing to talk about. You know, that's all people were talking about, let's face it. And he was the great equalizer, too. If you were a nerd, if you were the biggest jock at school, if you were the head cheerleader, you could always talk about Ghoulardi. He was that popular. He was easily the biggest star to come out of Cleveland. You know, I wanted to bring up about his movie career, though, his movie hosting career. He had left Channel 3 with a guy named Tom Conway, later Tim Conway, and they went over to Channel 8. Well, he had a show on called Ernie's Place. I don't know if anybody remembers, but that's when they used to have movies on in the middle of the day, like at 10 o'clock. 2-hour slot. Well, they would have these movies on, but because he and Tim Conway, as the producer, would improvise so much, they never got to the end of the movie. So on Fridays, they would just run the ends of the movies. That didn't last long. So Ernie's Place came to an end, but Ghoulardi's star continued to rise.
And I have a brief clip of Ghoulardi, and then I'll explain here.
Terrific.
So we'll show, this is a little running back here.
Keep in mind, it's very difficult to find these clips because it was all done live.
So here's Ghoulardi, and this will give you just some sense of the craziness. And this was all live, was it? You know,
Absolutely.
Improvised. There was no scripts or anything like that. And
With very few exceptions. There was Parma plays. He did some special skits.
See, when you're real close like that, you miss this whole bit here. Oh boy, don't too close. You'll see the phony beard in the whole thing. Right. I got a very interesting letter from a guy, and I want to read it. And my friend has gone to get it. There you are. Just let me look through this here. Oh, listen, group. Somebody wrote in and said they don't care for Ghoulardi. Just call. Not only do they not care for him, but their whole bridge club hates him. Bridge? They already made the big one out in San Francisco so big you might as well give a game of it. Ghoulardi plays nothing but poker. See, what you do in poker, you get a girl and you poke her. Regarding Ghoulardi's show, there's a telegram. See, this Clint's got some money. Right away, I hate him. What is that? Does this program go to Parma? What is that? All right. Regarding Ghoulardi's show, same stinks. Show good, knock the nut. Written by the adults. All right.
so that's a taste of Ghoulardi. And then, do you want to mention, I'll stay back here.
Yeah.
We're like in a cockpit here, we're the pilot. So, briefly, you want to mention, I have a clip also of him working at what he became much more famous for nationally after he left Cleveland.
Oh, okay.
At ABC.
You know, at one time, he was the voice of all four networks. Not at the same time, but ABC, obviously, NBC for a time, and he was also the original voice of CNN before James Earl Jones. He gave that job up. He was too busy, which is pretty remarkable.
This is him doing, jokingly, I don't know, this fellow on the right, I never heard from again, but on the left, there's Ernie, and the sound is not great, but you'll be able to figure out what he's doing.
This is the Vegas promo from 1977. That's all right.
Yeah, Bob. The mob wants Dan Tanner bad, but Dan gets the mob good on Vegas.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now that was nice. Very nice. And you want to try another one?
Thank you.
Dear Ernie, I know
So
you
mark
never
me on
did
these?
a promo for Ozzie and Harriet
No, I never did.
since it was on in
Ozzie thinks he's having a quiet evening at home, but Rick's having a party tonight on Ozzie and Harriet.
Yeah, okay.
What a voice. What a voice. You know, I also want to point out that this book would not have been possible without my co-author, and she's with us today. Janice is here, and she did some tremendous research, and we were very fortunate to have been friends with so many of these people, and that's why we did the book, because, you know, TV is the great equalizer. I mean, if, like Ghoulardi was back then, if you're out on the West Coast, we have friends who are out on the West Coast in the show business industry, and if you're at a party and there's people from Cleveland there and they're talking, you're not from Cleveland, don't go over there, because they're just talking about Cleveland. And that was it. So, I mean, we had something very special here in Cleveland. And we had hosts like Dorothy Foldheim and Captain Penny and Barnaby that were there for 30 years. You're not going to see that anymore. In fact, now if you're 30 on television, by 31 you're selling insurance.
Don't I know it. So anyway, you were friends with so many of these folks, and you've told me many times, every time I see him, he has a different story about Barnaby.
Oh, yeah.
So tell us who Barnaby was, and then maybe the story when he was trying to eat. In the diner.
Oh, all right, yeah. Well, I'll clean that one up. How's that? All right. Lynn Sheldon was a dear friend of ours, and a great, great man, and a terrific actor, and he played a lot of different roles. And he actually played a role called Uncle Leslie at one time. He was a hobo clown.
This is a children's host. We have to make sure people know. Okay, good.
He was a hobo clown on WEWS, and he had a bunch of different shows. He had a show with his wife, which was a reality show called The Sheldons. At any rate, in 1954, he heard that they were paying more over Channel 3 to host Popeye cartoons. He said, that's for me. So they said, well, what are we going to do? We got to have a kid show host. And he said, there's this kid from Elyria in the back. He's got a nice deep voice. Why don't you give him a try? So I said, get Penfound out here. So Ron Penfound came out, and they had a sponsor for this new show, Lionel Trains. This is going to be great. We're going to sell a lot of trains. In fact, there was a guy on the West Coast named Engineer Bill. And they thought, we'll put him in a train outfit, and I bet we'll sell a lot of Lionel trains. At that time, they were going to sell anything. It could have been, Refrigerator Bill if they could sell refrigerators. Mr. Whirl, Mr. Maytag, I don't know. At any rate, what happened was, before they went on the air, and this is the same thing that happened to Lynn Sheldon, they said, well, what are you going to call yourself? They didn't have, they didn't even have TV guides back then. They didn't know what they were putting on the air that night. So he said, well, Penny's sort of our family nickname. I'll be Captain Penny. And they said, fine, go out there and be Captain Penny. So he goes out there, does his show, and that's when they used to have a big train in the back, if you remember that old Captain Penny show. At any rate, after the show, he comes into the control room, and there's Uncle Leslie, still in his makeup. There was a brief time where Uncle Leslie, Lynn Sheldon, and Captain Penny were on the same station. And he walks in, and Lynn said, kid, that was pretty good. But I got news for you. My dad is a train man. He says, there's porters and brakemen and coalmen and engineers. There's no captains. He said, Penfound puts a cigarette in his mouth, lights it. He says, who cares? This thing's off the air in 2 weeks. 17 years he was on. Well, Lynn went on to Channel 3. What do they ask just before he goes out? What name are you going to use? He said, I don't know. I thought it was the Lynn Sheldon show. And they said, well, and his stagehand said, I got a dog named Barnaby. He said, that's good enough for me. So he became Barnaby.
That's how I got my name.
Was that right?
My folks are here. They'll tell you. So he was Barnaby on 3, and then later he switched, but he was on for aggregate decades, was he not?
Yeah, he sure was. He was on until the 1990s. Yeah. And, after he had left the air, he says, it was just time. And he and I had gotten to know each other. And Jan and I would get together with he and his wife Laura often. And I would go out to lunch with him every couple of weeks. And he had some health problems. So we were going into a place. We always used to have lunch at this place called the Diner on 117th and Clifton. And we'd go in there, and we'd sit down, and the waitress would come over, and she knew us. We were there every 2 weeks. She'd say, you guys want menus or the regular, or what you usually get? And we'd always say the usual. And then one day Lynn says, what do I usually get? And the waitress said, corned beef hash, no toast, you might eat it. And he said, oh, that's right. But at any rate, before we went in one day, he was kind of down, and he said, why is it it's always Lynn Barnaby Sheldon when they introduce me? And it was cold out that day, too, I remember. He says, it's not Charles Quasimodo Lawton. And I said, listen, it's a role that you're loved for. Be glad that you're remembered. And he said, yeah, So he said, I'm just tired of it. So we walk in. There's hardly anybody in the diner. I hope this is the story you want.
Yeah, this is
exactly.
Clean it up
as much as I can. I'm so excited. Okay. So we walk in. There's hardly anybody there. There's 4 policemen there. And there's a guy at the counter. And he looks around and he goes like this. And Lynn looks at me and he says, here it comes. I cleaned it up. At any rate, we sit down. Lynn just wants to be left alone. The guy walks over, picks up his hand. Hello, Barnaby. How you doing, Barnaby? Good to see you, Barnaby. And everything is Barnaby, Barnaby, Barnaby. And Lynn's like, oh, boy. He said, thank you. It's so nice to be remembered. Thank you. My friend and I are going to have a conversation. But thank you again. Nice to see you. Shakes his head. They bring the coffee out. Lynn's got the coffee in his hand like this. You know, Barnaby, this, that, Barney, Barnaby, yeah. So you could tell this is not going to end well. And he says, you know, again, thank you, but we have some important things to discuss. But you know, it's people like you that make life worth living because you're just terrific. Guy turns around, goes back to the corner. He's shaking his head like. They bring us the omelets and his corned beef hash with no toast or potatoes because he might eat them. He's got the fork in his right hand. The guy comes over, picks up Lynn's left hand and starts shaking it. You know, Barnaby, I don't know, I remember how you used to end every show. And he said, tell him Barnaby said hello. He says, no. You used to say you could fool some of the people some of the time. It's the perfect storm. I'm watching a slow motion train wreck. Lynn said, yeah, and I'm not going to tell you what the rest of it was. There's children in the audience. The guy looks like this. The 4 policemen at the next counter go out like this, booth, and they're like this. And the guy walks back, shell-shocked. And I looked over at him and I said, listen, just because you can't hear yourself doesn't mean this whole place can't hear you. He said, I don't care. I said, here's my next book, The X-Rated Lynn Sheldon. He said, I'll give you all the material you want and make a couple of bucks off it. We got out of there as quick as possible.
Yeah.
But he was, well, the thing is, the point is, though, I think that you're making, he was not Barnaby in real life. He was Lynn Sheldon. He was just a regular guy. But let me say this, toward the end of his life, to his last days, he was the sharpest comedian I ever saw. We were there at the Cleveland Clinic once, walking through. A woman runs up and she says, oh, I'm so happy to see you here. And he says, in a hospital, think about that. But just as sharp as could be. And, well, one story that I told at the end, and this is actually at the end of the book, Lynn didn't want to go into TV. He saw no reason to go into TV. He's got a stage career with TV. Nobody's going to see me. So this guy, Herman Percher at the Alpine Village, says, we got all these people coming through. This is free advertising. You want to be employed here, you're going on TV. All right. Well, he didn't think anybody would remember him from TV. I can tell you, this happened 15 years ago. Or 12 years ago. Our goddaughter, Bianca, was 7 years old, and she was staying at our house. And she's now a freshman at Kent State. And Lynn calls me up, and he says, hey, bank, supermarket, lunch. Take me to the first 2, I'll take you to the last. I said, well, fine, I got a 7-year-old here. He said, she can't eat that much, come on. So bring her along. Well, I'm not going to leave her here, you know. No. So we go to his apartment, the Winton place. We roll up, and I could tell something's wrong. So he opens the door. He says, hi, Bianca, nice to meet you. And he looks at me and he says, Clay Conroy died this morning. Barnaby told me that Woodrow the Woodsman died. And the kid in the back didn't know either one of them. Well, so many people came up to Lynn during the day that at the end of our visit, Bianca comes up and she says, can I ask Mr. Sheldon for his autograph? And I said, I think that's a great idea. He thought he would not be remembered. He would never be forgotten. Yeah. I think of all the people from television, it's Ghoulardi, Dorothy Foldheim, Captain Penny, Barnaby. There's that handful of people. But he was one of them. I mean, and he's affected all of us to this day. I mean, we all remember these people.
True point. I remember seeing him even when I was little.
Sure.
And you mentioned the Holy Trinity there, and we haven't gotten yet to Dorothy Baby.
Wow.
So tell the folks, I mean, who knows who Dorothy Foldheim is? Who doesn't? Maybe that's easier.
Who does not know who Dorothy Foldheim is? See, there you go.
John's looking down. My friend John did this.
Oh,
he's not from here, though. He's not from here, though. That's all right.
There's going to be a quiz afterwards,
He's a younger guy. True point. Oh, and Meg. Hey, Meg, how's it going?
You know, Dorothy Foldheim was a network journalist on radio and a print journalist before she ever got to television. Think about this. Now, here's the thing about Cleveland television. Think about the 1940s, post-war, the early 1950s, into the 60s. This was still a very conservative, sexist, anti-Semitic society in many ways. The first employee at Channel 5 is a Jewish woman. And she's 53 years old when she started. Think how remarkable that is. Nobody on TV is going to be 53 years old in a few years. No. She had a long history, and she had interviewed many leaders prior to this. She grew up very poor in St. Louis. In fact, when her brother died, they couldn't afford a coffin. He was buried in an orange crate. But her father used to take Dorothy to the courts to hear how attorneys spoke. And she became very learned, and she was an actress at one time. At any rate, in the 1930s, she went to Germany. She wanted to speak to Hitler. Well, who's going to stop her? They found out you can't. Right. And she spoke fluent German. So she went to Munich. Now, there's two different versions of this story, but I got this from her producer, Tom Piscura. Dorothy Foldheim went to Germany, this in the 1930s, to see what was happening there. And this is after the putsch and everything in Munich. So she went to the same beer hall where they had the putsch, and there was a flower show there. Well, she found out that Hitler was going to be there. So she goes up to Goebbels or Goerings or whatever, and she says, I want to speak to the Fuhrer. And they said, yeah, fat chance. So she saw him, just walked over, started talking to him about flowers. She didn't want to let on that she was, a journalist from America, but she just started speaking about, and she got enough from him where she came back and she got on the air and she said, this man's going to be the end of civilization unless we contain him now. And apparently the people at ABC Radio said, you can't say that. You can't go on the air and say that. Guess who was right? I think Dorothy, Dorothy spoke to every major leader when you think about it.
Sure.
Over the years. Well, I think the funny thing was, Jerry Rubin, of course.
Well, that's what I was about to get to.
Yeah.
I don't know about major leader, but very well known.
Yeah.
And I've got the clip.
Oh,
you want to show it and then talk,
itself,
or talk?
Yes, let's do that.
So, Jerry Rubin, for folks, yippee.
Yeah,
and
sort of political theater.
Yeah.
Anarchist, lunatic.
Very much so. Yeah, a lot like Meg. Okay, so I'm going to put the clip on here.
Why
It's
don't you
only
put the
about
clip
2
on?
minutes.
We have a question back there. Yes.
Do we? Go ahead.
Did Dorothy Full-Time go on and say that about Hitler?
Yeah, on the radio. Yeah. But obviously, remember, this is before television. So, because television was put on hold by World War II.
Television was ready to go in the 1930s. The 1939 World's Fair featured
television. In fact, Franklin Roosevelt opened the fair via television. But they needed a lot of different things for the war and the war effort, and that was one of them. So, but at any rate, Jerry Rubin came to town.
She's going to pull it up here.
To promote a book called Do It. Anybody remembers the Yippies?
Our guest is Jerry Rubin, who has done a book called Do It. Mr. Rubin, tell me what you talk about in the book.
Revolution, overthrowing the government, free sex, free dope, free TV.
Do you believe in those things?
I not only believe in it, do it. That's the title, do it.
You mean in free dope, you think you ought to be able to get it without paying for it?
Marijuana should be sold, or marijuana should be free in every drugstore. You ever turned on?
What do you mean by that?
Ever gotten high? Stoned?
No.
No?
I'm sorry.
But you drink?
Certainly, but I don't get stoned from it.
Alcohol is very bad for you.
No.
Dope is good.
Who says that?
Well, everybody who takes it,
Do doctors say it's good?
Well, doctors, what do they know? But people who take it, young kids who take it know it. Everyone on TV watching out there ought to tell her to smoke dope.
I'll tell you something. I had a woman who took dope. She was only 20 years old, lovely and beautiful. She just came out of jail. In order to get the dope, she became a prostitute so she'd have money for it. You think that's good?
No, well, that's because the society puts people in jail for smoking dope. There's over 300,000 people who smoke dope who are now in jail. People who drink alcohol put people who smoke dope in jail. Timothy Leary, our brother, is now in jail in California. 20 years for smoking dope, smoking flowers. And every young kid out there watching TV knows that smoking flowers is nice.
What do you mean by flowers?
Marijuana is a flower. It grows.
Oh, and you
it's a natural thing.
All right, well, let's go.
I mean, you smoke it and it's really nice. Alcohol is terrible. Alcohol knocks up your brain very bad.
Have you ever?
Alcohol destroys
Why?
you.
Have you been
alcohol is
drinking?
destroyed. Every time. No, I don't drink. I mean,
Well, then how do you know?
Well, I've tried it and it's just crazy, and I see what happens. Alcohol has destroyed the American middle class, made it the most destructive and racist class in the history of the world.
Why do you want a revolution?
I want a revolution, something can be free, so that we can free
Free from
Bobby
what?
Seale, free from racism, free from pigs. We got to eliminate all the pigs.
By pigs, you're referring to human beings or animals?
I'm referring to policemen.
Well, I've got a
No, you
shock
don't like
for
that.
you.
You don't like that.
I'm very friendly with police.
Oh, you are you? Well, I got a shock for you. I'm very friendly with the Black Panther Party.
Out. Stop the interview.
And that was
Wow.
it.
And he did not expect that either, by the way.
Now Dorothy Foldheim, she was about 93 when she passed away.
Yeah.
Jerry Rubin was like 50-some years old. He was hit by a car.
Yeah.
After investing in Apple Computer and becoming a...
Well, the funny thing is, a few weeks later, who comes to town? Abby Hoffman, Jerry's buddy. So she sticks her head in there. And by the way, Dorothy never read the books. She said she wants to approach each interview fresh. Well, she's getting 5 books a week, let's face it. But anyway, she pokes her head in. She said, "You heard what happened to your friend, didn't you?" And he said, yes, sir. So, at any rate, he comes out, he's got this skinny tie, he greases his hair back, and he's looking into the camera like this. And he's got this book called Steal This Book. And she said, no, this is the name of your book, Steal This Book. And he said, yes, sir. And everything was yes, sir, and no, sir. Even by the end of the interview, Dorothy is laughing at this point. Well, what happened about a week later, though, May 4th, 1970. And Dorothy Foldheim went on the air and said, the National Guard are murderers. She said, there is no reason that 4 students should go down in a hail of gunfire. Wow.
Yeah.
It jammed the switchboards. People were enraged with Dorothy. And she thought she was going to be fired. And she went back to her office, and Don Paris, the general manager, came in, and she said, look, before you say anything, you have to do what you have to do, and I respect that. And he came around, put his arms around her and said, here's what I'm going to do. You go home and get a good night's sleep. You're 10 feet tall. And at that point, she said, why would I work anywhere else? And you know what? Anybody would have jumped at a chance to get Dorothy Foldheim. She would never have considered going anywhere else. So she was a remarkable woman, a truly remarkable woman, really.
And she was on the air pretty much until she was, health reasons, incapacitated. Or,
yeah.
She had the stroke and
Sure,
everything.
sure.
Yeah.
She was into her 80s. She was speaking to President Reagan when she had a stroke. And Don Paris was in the control room, and he looked, and he said, something's wrong. We have to end the interview. Well, the interview ended. She said, I have a terrible headache, and they knew it was a stroke. They called her doctor. The doctor came to the station, said, you're going right to the hospital. They did an x-ray. She had a blood clot the size of a fist in her head. He said, immediate surgery. As they were wheeling Dorothy into the operating room, they said, do you have any allergies? And she said, yes, men. They said, she'll be okay. But she was truly a remarkable woman, and she lasted a long time. I don't think that anybody could even match any of the, her longevity on the air, certainly. Sure. When she died, there was just accolades coming from everyone. Barbara Walters did a special story for Associated Press about her. Here's one thing that a lot of people may not know. They used to keep beer at WEWS for Dorothy. They called it Mother's Stash. But here's the reason. It's not because she was an alcoholic. She was hypoglycemic. And it was dark beer. She liked dark beer. She would take a couple of sips of dark beer, she'd be fine. When she was on the road, she was on her own. But she'd take a couple of sips, she was fine after. If she started to fade, and at one point, she actually did have a glass by her feet when she was doing it. And I asked Don Paris about this. I said, is it true that Dorothy Foldheim drank beer at the station? And I remember he looked at me and he said, never on the air. Well, I didn't think so. But if you'll remember the early Dorothy Foldheim, those 15-minute commentaries she did in the 50s and 60s, they were sponsored by Duke Beer. And she would sit behind a podium, and there's the Duke like this holding up a beer to her. So Dorothy was truly just a remarkable woman.
I'm going to start doing that.
Oh, yeah, really?
Because it's radio, no one's going to see. Yeah. There's been so many news people. She, of course, came from the network to Cleveland, but there's a number of folks, not just news, but in general, like Tim Conway, who went from Cleveland up to the network. We were sort of the proving ground back in the 50s, 60s, 70s.
That's absolutely true. Sure. We always were a proving ground in Cleveland. In fact, they would send people here to get rid of their New York accent. Al Roker. Al Roker said he loved Cleveland so much, despite the time when he was here, when it was pollution and everything else. He loved it here so much, he said he never would have gone anywhere else if it didn't come from his old hometown. He wanted his parents to see him on TV.
Do you want to see Al Roker when he was here?
I think that'd be a great idea.
Oddly, and I didn't mark this, so I have to do it. I have to sort of find it. This is a find. I'm going to have to thank my father because he used to record all sorts of stuff off TV, and he's here too. Yeah. And we happened to have this tape from when I was little that had this bizarre commercial on it. Well, I don't want to prejudice you folks, bizarre or not, but let me find it here. Al Roker.
By the way, Al was only in his late 20s when he got here. So
here he is. Now, I'm not doing this to poke fun, but he looks vastly different today, as you can imagine.
Come join special guest Brian Gumbel of NBC's Today Show and NFL Hall of Famer Paul Warfield at a black tie affair hosted by the Black Media Workers of Cleveland on October 8th at the Boncourt Hotel. Proceeds of the event will go to the Cleveland Scholarship Programs and the United Negro College Fund. Tax-deductible price is $50 per person. Please order your tickets to this gala affair by calling 861-8421 or...
Oh, It's only in a few months from now. I'll be there. And within a year, he was at WNBC, having lost his accent and whatnot.
He did quite well for himself. As a matter of fact, Al was a cartoonist. His dad was also a cartoonist. And his dad worked for the transit system, I believe. Oh. And he wanted to get into cartooning, and his dad never had the opportunity because it was an unstable kind of career, and he had a good job there. But he and his dad were both great fans of cartooning. And in fact, when he was here, Al used to do cartoons for the weather. And you know, it's funny because I remember, and we all grew up when TV was still very primitive, okay? I remember they used to actually draw things instead of having all the graphics and stuff like that. And when they actually had magnets of the sun and rain and stuff like that, I said, it will never get more advanced than this.
Little did you know.
Once again, I'm wrong. You know.
Yeah, that's all right.
Oh, well.
And then, so, excuse me, the folks who went from Cleveland up to the National after losing their accents and everything.
Sure.
One fella he had chances and he very much decided, no, I'm going to stay here, was Chuck Shadowski, who started he was a hand on, you know, a PA.
Sure.
And now everybody knows him. Who doesn't know Big Chuck? We're going to quiz the audience here. Later there will be a different quiz with prizes.
That's right.
Okay, everybody knows except John again went like this. Oh. Like that. No, I'm kidding. So Chuck Shadowski started out, he was a cameraman for the Browns, right? For Channel 8 for the Browns. And
well, you know, it's funny because he was working in a foundry. And because he grew up, you know, on the Near East Side in that, they call it Goose Town, you know, the Polish neighborhood there. Yeah. Oddly enough, down the street from the guy who would play Franz the Toy Maker, Ray Stariarski. But at any rate, he went to broadcast school, started at Channel 3. He was actually working with Barnaby for a short time, got a chance to go over to Channel 8, do the Browns and things like that, and wanted to make a couple extra bucks. So they said, we got this show on Friday nights, but you got to work with Ernie Anderson. He said, oh, boy, yes. Well, you saw what happened and became a legend. One thing I want to bring up about Ernie Anderson, too, that was a really loose show, and in the beginning of the show, most of the time, Ernie was sober. By the end of the show, he never was. Here's the reason. Right next door was a bar called Seagram's. They called it the Swamp.
This is on Playhouse Square, where the studios were.
Exactly. And Ernie would do some shtick, improv some shtick, then they'd go to the movie, he'd run over to the bar and play dominoes and have martinis. And then they'd say, whoop, you're going to a commercial. I'll be right back. They'd watch him do his shtick. He'd come over, there'd be a fresh martini, and they'd finish the game of dominoes. But the drunker he got, the funnier he was. That was a great thing. And at one time, there was a strike at Channel 8. Chuck was telling me there was a strike at Channel 8. And they were all out there picketing. And Ernie's out there at like 11:30 on a Friday night, picketing with everybody else. And they had a couple of the guys from sales or something doing Goulardi. It wasn't working. Word comes down, the strike's over. Ernie, you're on. What? Well, he was at the bar all day. This was some show. But nobody cared. No. You know, he was just that popular. Yeah. But Chuck Shadowski never wanted to be on TV. And Ernie loved to make fun of Chuck and Parma and all that stuff. And finally Chuck said, listen, you make fun of Parma one more time, I'm going to drown you out. So every time he brought up Parma, up comes the polka music. Yeah. And it became one of his, actually one of his trademarks.
He was the director.
Yeah,
back there.
Sure.
And then after Ernie left for California, it became Big Chuck and Houlihan.
Wait a minute.
Yeah.
There was a problem there.
What's that?
We just found out about this. One thing you don't do, and this is in the next book, don't mess with the critics, because they'll destroy you. And the newspaper critics were very important back then. They were talking about the Big Chuck and Houlihan 5th anniversary or something. Bill Hickey was the plain dealer, if you remember that. He got this angry call from Bob Wells, who played Houlihan. He says, hey, Hickey, you're here long enough. It's the Houlihan and Big Chuck show. He said, oh, my mistake. And by the way, I'll never make that mistake again. 5 years later, he still hadn't mentioned him until he left. So, but yeah, the Houlihan and Big Chuck show.
In my heart, it's Big Chuck and Houlihan.
I agree.
How about that? That's what
I've always thought it was the same thing.
He left. What is he doing? Have you seen? There's a commercial. I don't have it marked, but there's a commercial on YouTube for Houlihan. The Living Bible on tape.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So good Easter gift if you can go back in time.
Sure. He was in an episode of Superboy too. So.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah. He was also in a movie. There was a movie that was done here called Age of Aquarius. And it was done right around the time of Hair, if you remember that. But by the time they got all the production done and everything, this was just a horrible movie. What happened was, they said, we're going to put this thing in a can. And Houlihan's in this movie, along with some other local celebrities, like Jeff Kutash and people like that from Upbeat. At any rate, what happened is, One day he's walking down the street in Chicago, and they put him up in this hotel. He was doing voiceovers. He's walking past this theater, and he looks, he says, "What's this movie, Ghetto Freaks?" And he says, "Uh-oh." He walks into this B-movie house. They just renamed the film Ghetto Freaks. And he said, "Please don't let me have my name in the credits." It was. He doesn't promote that very often.
He had his clothes on, though, right, in the movie?
Yeah.
Yeah, they didn't re-edit. Okay, well, that's good.
It was an ugly movie.
So every year they have Ghoulardi Fest. Now, Houlihan was the weatherman at Channel 8.
Yeah.
And then he would do this on the side. Chuck Schodowski was a director.
Sure.
And they'd join forces Friday nights. And one of the most famous, I think, sketches, which I'll only show a portion of, they must always show this at Ghoulardi Fest, is Guitar Zan.
Oh, yes.
So we'll watch maybe a minute or so of this.
Sounds good.
And this looks like another, hey, let's go next door, get a drink, come back, and maybe tape something.
I kind of got that impression, but here's the interesting thing about this. They recreated this on stage at Ghoulardi Fest a couple of years ago.
He's free as the breeze, he's always at ease. He lives in the jungle and hangs by his knees as he swings through the trees without a trapeze in his BBD. He's got a union card and he's practicing hard to play the guitar. Gonna be a big star, yeah, he's gonna go far and carry moonbeams home in a jar. He ordered Chet's guitar core, COD, makes A and E, and he's working on B, and dig C and W and R and B, and me and a chimpanzee agree that one day soon he'll be a celebrity. Get it, get it, get it, get it out! Guitar Zan! He's a guitar man! He's all you can stand! Give him a hand, Guitar Zan!
Wow.
And that was just them lip syncing. One night they decided, hey, let's do that. This is one of the most famous clips, I'd say, probably
easily,
from the show. Yeah.
And the funny thing is, they do this every, they did this a couple of years ago. Now, keep in mind that none of these guys are getting any younger. Chuck, Dick Goddard, Houlihan, they're all in their 80s. But Houlihan loves to come to this Ghoulardi Fest. His whole year revolves around Ghoulardi Fest. Well, he has a heart attack. And he's in the hospital, and the doctor said, "Buddy, you need triple bypass." And he said, "Well, Ghoulardi Fest is 3 weeks from now. I'll do it after that." And he said, "You're not leaving the hospital." He had the triple bypass. He came to Ghoulardi Fest. And he comes walking in like, he's like on his last legs. And by the way, if you see him now, he's perfectly healthy. But he actually drove up, his daughters drove him up. I think he was laying in the back seat.
From Florida, right?
From Florida to be at Ghoulardi Fest. I love Ghoulardi Fest. If I got triple bypass, I'll watch the film, really. I mean, there comes a time.
Yeah, and so this eventually morphed into Big Chuck and Little John, and I don't think it's up on YouTube. I couldn't find it anymore, but do you want to talk about how Little John sort of got into the family? He was part of this show first.
Yeah, and well, the funny thing is, we knew about Little John when I was a kid because I don't know if his uncle was a very prominent doctor, Dr. John Rinaldi, same size. And he was my doctor. And when I was 12 years old, he lived on East Boulevard. That's when people used to go to people's homes, and they had their examinations in their homes. And I remember he'd get up on a stool to look in my ear, and I remember once he's looking how tall I was, and he looked at my father, and he's got that gruff voice like, John. He says, "Frank, what are you feeding this kid, kibasi?" Instead, that's my father. And but at any rate, John, John went to John Adams High School. Just, they knew him from various places, and, from various events, and he just became part of the show. It seemed like a logical choice. And John right now has a jewelry store in Solon, does very well, and hey, little things mean a lot, as he says. Come on in, sell me your gold.
Yeah, and the show's still on and is sort of that Saturday afternoon.
They're doing some new skits now, too.
Yeah, so it's lasted, I don't know how many decades, 47?
A long time.
Yeah, probably a record.
Well, that's a good point, too, because so many years, we don't want to give up our heroes. We love our heroes. Very few cities are like that, okay? Okay, maybe in Pittsburgh they have Chili Billy Cardilli, if you've ever heard of him. That's it. We had Dorothy Fuldheim. I will guarantee you, if Dorothy Fuldheim was 104, she'd still be on TV today. You know, if she wanted to be on, she'd still be there today.
True point.
But we just love our heroes. We don't want to give them up.
No, that's true. Do you have a story maybe you can preview from the new volume that didn't make it into this first one?
Yeah, there's a whole bunch of them. Let me see. Is there any personality especially? Or?
Well, let me just. I'll look at the cover here. I'll guess.
Paige Palmer.
Yeah, I was going to say Paige Palmer.
Paige was a real pip. She was, actually, she grew up very poor as well. She lived in Greene, and she brought herself up through, through the ranks and everything. And it was kind of funny because a lot of people don't realize she smoked 4 packs a day. But in 1964, she quit. Cold turkey, she should have got a medal for that. That's 80 cigarettes a day?
Yeah.
And she quit cold turkey?
I can do that.
Oh, yeah. But at any rate, the great thing was, here's a story for the next book. Remember, this was live, okay? You didn't know what was going on over TV, and if something was said that was wrong, you hoped it was on its way to Venus, and nobody saw it, okay? Well, what happened is they had somebody on there talking about, bacteria or something like that. And this doctor's there, and he says, okay, I'm going to put this slide in here. Take a look through this microscope. See those things moving around? She says, wow, they are moving around. Are you telling me these are living organisms? And he just kind of rolled his eyes. So. But there are a lot of wonderful characters from Cleveland. And I'll tell you what, just enjoy TV now because things are changing rapidly. The internet has changed everything. Radio, TV, we're always going to have programming. But it's just the way we get it, okay? We don't get music from 8-tracks anymore, cassettes. So we don't even get it from CDs.
No, you just click a button. It's all going to be online.
Exactly.
And when we talked about the book, by the way, if you go to WKSU.org, my story interviewing Mike is up there.
Well
Several
done.
of them.
Yep.
Superman, you're the expert on Superman and everything. But we talked about how the change in technology has sort of killed local TV, essentially, and there's not going to be local TV anymore. What will be? Will there be any remnant? Will news even? Will that still be around 5, 10 years from now?
Let me just say this. I'm not saying this just because Kabir is here. You're one of the pioneers in this respect because it's going to become much more local and much more local personality.
I thought you meant everyone be Indian.
No.
Oh, okay.
But at any rate, what's going to happen is there's been a rumor for a long time. And it's been rumored, but this stuff does tend to come true. Number one, the internet will be your cable provider, okay? And once the internet comes into cars, radio goes, and Sirius XM, satellite, they all go out the window basically because that's going to be your music provider, your internet. Same with your TV. There has been talk for some time that the networks are going to pull all their network programming from local affiliates. CBS, NBC, ABC, and Fox, all at the same time. What does that leave local TV with? Well, Seinfeld reruns and news, when you think about it, an old TV series. But at any rate, they'll all go to either cable. So if you want to see Modern Family, go to abc.com or the ABC cable channel. Now, they're also going to argue, well, this is our way of bringing back soap operas. Who's home in the middle of the day to watch soap operas? You'll have to tape it or something. But it's changing rapidly. That's one of the reasons that Janice and I wanted to do this book. Number one, these people were so important to all of us as we were growing up. Their stories had to be preserved. Think about this. TV, radio, it's like a water tap. Put it on when you want it, off when it's going to be there when you come back. But these people had a great influence on us, shaping our lives, and our kids' lives, our grandchildren's lives, and we want their stories to be remembered. They were so important to us, they cannot be forgotten. Another reason that Jan and I wrote the book, we wanted to dispel a lot of rumors. No kid show host ever went on the air and went crazy, okay? No kid show host ever committed suicide, in Cleveland, that is, okay? Ghoulardi did not blow up a frog on TV. I swear I saw it. I believe you saw it, but it never happened. Whatever he's on, I want some, though. True. But it's just, it was just a situation where, look, urban legends take over, and the facts have to remain. So we had a question in the back there. Mr. Jingling. There were several Mr. Jinglings. There were 5 different Mr. Jinglings. Now, the 2 that are probably the most prominent, the one from the 50s and early 60s was a guy named Max Ellis, who was with the Cleveland Playhouse. He passed away. Another guy took over for a year. And then the producer, the guy that used to be Mr. Nicholsworth on the Captain Penny show, who produced Mr. Jingling, his name was Earl Keyes, took over Mr. Jingling. Well, he became Mr. Jingling year-round. And he was just a great fan of Christmas. People loved him. And his wife was Mrs. Jingling, and the keeper of the keys. You know, this was actually originated in Chicago, and it was based on a song. And it was an actual song about how he saved Christmas because Santa lost his keys, and the locksmith, Mr. Jingling, came in. Mr. Jingling died the day after Christmas. And it was front page. Mr. Jingling passes day after Christmas.
Wow.
So, it's the way he would have wanted it.
Yeah, definitely.
Sure.
We'll take some more. I see another question in the back. Go ahead.
Yeah, Terry.
Mike, you mentioned something about Tim Tom Conway.
Yeah. Notice Tim Tom Conway. He changed his name. Yes. Go ahead, Terry. Tim Conway, he's still out on the West Coast, sharp as a tack.
Yeah.
And I've been talking to his wife. His wife's name is Sharky, by the way. Charlene, but she goes by Sharky. Sure. So I called him up about Goulardi Fest last year, and Tim answers the phone. I said, "Oh, hi, Tim. I'm calling about Goulardi Fest." He says, "Well, talk." And I said, I didn't need, I hope I'm not getting in the middle of dinner. And there's a pause. He says, "This is California. We can't afford to eat dinner." But the funny thing was, after he went to California, by the way, he came back, during the summer from McHale's Navy during the hiatus. And he and Ernie Anderson did some films together, some promotional things. Ernie was already Goulardi. But if somebody can help me find this movie, I'll tip my hat to you. They did a promotional film together for General Electric quiet, cool air conditioners, produced in Cleveland. It was 15 minutes long, just for the dealers. They improvised so much. It's said to be some of the funniest stuff either one of these guys ever did. And they said that there was so much improv in this that the producers just said, "Keep it in. This is great. We want to entertain these people at the same time." So if you know where I can get a 1963 GE quiet, cool air conditioner promotional film, I got to talk to you. Because this is the great lost Goulardi Tim Conway film. Yeah. Tim Conway obviously had a tremendous career. He finally convinced Ernie Anderson to come out to California. And if you'll notice, on the Carol Burnett show, she would always introduce Ernie Anderson from the audience. He was only there once. It was the same film every week. Yeah. He played, actually with her husband.
Joe Hamilton.
Yeah, Joe Hamilton. Yeah. He played golf with them. And it was just a crazy
goof. Yeah.
I got to talk to Ernie. Sadly, this was his last interview. And I was working at Channel 19, and I wanted to see what happened to Goulardi. So I called up his agent, and his agent, Rita Veneri, said, "Look, he has brain and lung cancer. He's not going to be around long. I don't think he's ready to do an interview." And I said, "Okay, fine." She said, "I'll ask him just for the heck of it." Excuse me. Well, she calls back. She said, "This is crazy, but he wants to do this interview. You better come out here." So we fly out to the West Coast. We go in. Is this the right house? Yes, it is, because there's a memo on the wall. And it's beautifully framed, museum matting and stuff. And it says, "To staff from Norman Wagey." There's a Channel 8 thing. "There will be no motorcycle riding in my office." Apparently, Ernie rode a motorcycle into his office. Yeah. At any rate, Ernie's wife and Rita Veneri said, "Listen, he's heavily medicated. And if he just wants to talk about one thing, like, a tomato patch he had in Boston or something like that, please don't film that." We said, "Well, we won't want to do that." So we go up there, we walk in. Here's this little man. If anybody saw the movie Magnolia by Paul Thomas Anderson, that's exactly the way Ernie looked. Bald. Now, he's got a tank of oxygen this big. And he's got a thing under his nose. And a cigarette in his hand. And I thought, if this thing blows up, I blew up with Ernie Anderson. No, Goulardi. Anyway, I walk in and he looks at me and he says, "Olszewski, from Parma?" And they said, "He's fine. Go ahead." So for the next hour, and then Jack Riley came in, who played Mr. Carlin, and Ann Elder from Laugh-In, they stopped in. For the next hour, Ernie was obscene, he swore, he laughed, he made fun of me and everything else. Then at the end of it, he said, and every time he'd say something, I'd say, "Hey, did you hear that? Did Goulardi call you that, huh?" At any rate, when it was all over, he said, "Look, put the camera back on." And we put the camera on, and he says, "I just want to say thank you to everyone in Cleveland for putting up with my nonsense and for remembering me." So when it was off, he said, "You realize I was just doing that for the camera." He says, "If I would have known you were from Cleveland, you would have been welcome here anytime." And I said, "Ernie, you're a legend. We had to have you. We had to have you on tape." And he said, "Yeah, and you're going to need that tape when I die." And then he said, "Get out." So we left. But, I mean, what an amazing experience. And the thing was, he lit one cigarette off the other. Oh, and he took the oxygen off. There's raw oxygen here around a flame. And a tank this big.
But it all worked out.
But we survived.
You
yes.
did? Oh, yeah, because you're here.
Yeah, my hair grew back.
Well, I've got a couple little prizes here.
Oh, you do? Terrific.
And so, not for you.
Oh.
Sorry. Yeah.
Any other questions?
Yeah, well, I was going to say if there's questions, or we'll ask them some questions.
Yeah,
oh, there's one in the back.
Yes.
I have one more question. In your first book, why not more about Mike Douglas?
You know why? Because Mike was a syndicated show, but we do have more in the second. Okay. Yeah, we do have like a brief history, but that was really a syndicated show. Mike Dowd was his real name, and Mike was an amazing entertainer. And you know, the amazing thing about Mike Douglas is that Barbara, you know, he used to have these people come in, and Channel 3, which was owned by Westinghouse at that time, is that right, Terry? I believe it was, yeah. They brought in Barbara Streisand. Well, Barbara Streisand wanted to be paid for the week as the co-host. So I think, and we'll have to ask Terry afterwards, I think they paid her $1,500. Now, this is in early 1960s money. That's a lot of cash. And she insisted on having a gig. Well, they got her a gig in this bar in Lakewood for the week. So they taped the whole series of shows. The general manager is livid. We paid her how much? And the tapes at that time were this big. And it was $1 an inch to run quad tape. It was 2-inch tape. He said, wipe those tapes clean. I need them for public service announcements. They'd be worth tens of millions of dollars now.
And most of the TV, that's what happened. They got wiped.
Well, yeah, sure, it was mostly live. Yeah, that's why there's very little TV from that era that's still around. I mean, it was shot on cheap film stock because who thought anybody's going to care about this? Remember, news would just have like 1 or 2 clips of film, and then they'd have pictures, like still pictures. And I remember when the Beatles came to town, they took like about 10 seconds, threw the whole film out. Luckily, somebody retrieved it.
Yeah.
And here's another thing. Somebody actually went to the Beatles at their press conference and they asked, are you going to meet Ghoulardi when you're here? And John Lennon says, who's Ghoulardi? And the guy says, he's the first one to play your records. Well, he wasn't. But Paul McCartney said, well, if he was, he's got good taste.
There you go.
But the Beatles knew about Ghoulardi, yes.
What is it that made this market so potent? We've moved away and come back, and it's still, you could walk in anywhere and have people come together like tonight, and if there was a bigger hall, you probably would have an arena.
Sure.
What is it about the combination of back in Jean Carroll into Dorothy Fulltime that created an alchemy that we were Polish, Hungarian, Indian, whatever, and we were a group? What made that?
You know what? I think it's just the shared experience. Keep in mind, we were a bigger market back then. We had a lot, you know, Cleveland itself had a bigger population. I think it's just the shared experience. It's something that we all share. In the next book, Jan and I talk about some of the things that no longer are with us. Remember the old big-time wrestling? With Lorne Ethel Leighton and all that sort of thing? And, you know, Lorne Ethel Leighton had this very thick Australian accent. I wish I could do it, but he'd say, all right, this Bobo Brazil's a cagey veteran. Hello, he's introduced the Cocoa Butt. And, you know, people would say, you watched this? We say, yeah, you missed out. Yeah, you know, that was ours. It's something we all share. It's something that we can all just share and say, this was ours. And these were the pioneering days. And keep in mind, there wasn't as many diversions like the internet and computer games, things like that. We had very little media. But the stuff that we had was also extremely creative. What they could not do with special effects, they made up with talent. Lynn Sheldon could have a thread and make you think that there was a flea circus on that thread. You know, really. I mean, he had an invisible parrot. So, and to this day, you know, people would just say, invisible parrot, that's great, you know. Where do you find that? You can't see it, you know. How do you capture it?
Exactly.
But I think it was just a shared experience and just a tremendous talent and just the best personalities anywhere.
And it bonded a generation.
It certainly did bond a generation, yeah. And you know what? They do that out in Hollywood. They talk about Cleveland, but here we talk about it too. So, yeah. Yes?
You mentioned Ghoulardi and the son of the ghoul.
Yes.
Did you get into the ghoul at all?
A little bit. You know, Ron Swede was his intern and basically copied Ghoulardi. And for people that didn't know Ghoulardi, they were too young, because Ghoulardi was only here until late 1966. He moved in January 67. When WKBF, Channel 61, went on the air, Ron Swede just basically took over the Ghoulardi character. But it was a copyrighted character. So what happened was, trademarked, I should say. So he took the name The Ghoul. Here's something interesting. If you ever come upon a Ghoulardi autograph, and Ernie Anderson told me this himself, if it says G-H-O-U-L-A-R-D-I, it's phony. Here's why. Ernie would only sign them G-O-U-L-A-R-D-I. The reason is he found out that Storer had trademarked Ghoulardi. And he says, well, I can do the same thing. So he trademarked Goulardi. So if he ever left, he's Goulart.
He's got it. And
He's still
Store was a
Goulart.
company that owned Channel 8 at the
Yeah,
time.
exactly.
And,
Yeah, it was. Yeah. You know, we had some other great people too. I mean, we had so many, like Franz the Toy Maker. You know, Franz the Toy Maker was here. A lot of kid shows. Miss Barbara, of course. But and if you really want to go back to the 50s, you had Mr. Banjo, King Jupiter, a lot of wonderful people. The original Bozo the Clown. He was originally called Soapy, and then when the Bozo franchise came around, Ed Fisher from radio became Bozo the Clown. And what's kind of interesting is Bozo the Clown, the most famous Bozo the Clown, started in Chicago, but a guy from Cleveland Heights named Larry Harmon went to Chicago and became that Bozo the Clown. So Cleveland, the tentacles go out very far.
True.
Yeah,
Other questions?
Yes.
So this character is probably obscure. He's a weatherman on Channel 3.
Wally Canaan? The Weatherman.
The weatherman.
Yeah, Wally Canaan, the Weatherman.
So, any stories about him? Because I've got a story.
Well, Wally Canaan was a musician, and he used to play the trombone. And every once in a while, he'd come out there. And you know, the sad, right around that late 1960s, early 70s, they start looking at youth, okay? So Jim Grainer, if you remember that name, the Dorothy Foldheim wasn't going anywhere. But Jim Grainer went by the wayside, Wally Canaan went by the wayside. And one day, Wally Canaan was there, and they brought out Lawrence Welk to direct him. And he played the trombone, instead of doing the weather, of course, you know, who cares about the weather, you know? But he played the trombone as Lawrence was actually directing him. And you have a story about Wally Canaan.
The only thing I figured I would share is I was a student at the time at the university at Case, and we would watch the evening news with him doing the weather.
Yeah.
And then he would transform into this drunk at the 11 o'clock news, keeping with the theme that you were mentioning, that these guys were, you know,
well,
the more they drank, the better they got. That was Wally.
All were unique characters, and the funny thing was, they were all known for something. Jim Grainer was unflappable. If you remember Jim Grainer, perfectly coiffed hair. And Jim Grainer, it didn't matter what was going on behind the camera, they couldn't make him laugh. So one day they said, listen, we have to trip up Jim Grainer. Remember the Roxy Theater, the old burlesque house? They hired this stripper to come over. It's Friday night, there's just a crew there. So she comes in, standing there next to the camera, drops the trench coat, totally nude. Jim Grainer's there, and he didn't flinch. Gave all the scores. Forgot to give the teams. He said, tonight's score is 13-3, 22-5. Wow, what a blowout. And that was the closest they came. That was the closest they came. So, and you know, the funny thing was, Dick Goddard used to be on Channel 3. And then he went to KYW when they switched KYW back to Philadelphia. He didn't like Philadelphia. So he got an opportunity to come back, and they said to Channel 8, and they said, you know what? Houlihan's not cutting it. Let's put him in here. We'll find Houlihan something else to do. And they all became legends.
All worked out.
Yes.
What was the name of the show with the koala bears?
With the koala bears? Well, I don't know. There was Adventure Road. There was Jungle Larry. Well, wait a minute. Now, you know, Big Wilson, if anybody remembers Big Wilson, he's the guy that started out with the early show, and he wanted to show a family-type thing on Channel 3. So he said, let's get a kangaroo. That'll be our mascot. Let's get a real kangaroo. Well, a real kangaroo does not want to be caged. So Big Wilson, who admittedly was a huge drinker, lived most of the year on a yacht and on the west side. This was a yacht like you wouldn't believe. It had a fireplace and a huge room and liquor stacked up to the ceiling and in cases. Lynn Sheldon went to his house one day and he had a bag of chips and he says, what am I supposed to do with all that food? At any rate, Big Wilson says, you know what? Let's get a wallaby. They're smaller. So they went to the Australian, New Zealand, whatever consulate. They paid them off and they got a wallaby. They deliver it to Big Wilson's yacht. You can't train a wallaby. So the thing is messing the place up. They bring him in to Channel 3 to introduce the KY Wallaby. There's a picture of it in the book. It's not cooperative.
No.
And it's jumping all over the place. They finally called the zoo and said, come and get your wallaby. It's a gift from Channel 3. They just did koalas. There was a lot of animals on TV. And Jungle Larry was famous with Safari Jane and you know, an assistant named Bowana Myron or something. I don't know what it was, but you know. It's funny because there's now a guy called Jungle Bob Tuma, who, by the way, is, I guess, a stepbrother of Drew Carey, who continues the Jungle Larry tradition. And Jungle Larry and Captain Penny both went down to Naples, Florida. And Captain Penny died very early, when he was in his late 40s, from lung cancer. And they're both down there. So, but they were friends right to the end. Wow. So, other questions? Yes.
Anything on Pat McCormick?
Pat McCormick. Yeah, Pat McCormick was from Lakewood. Right. And Pat McCormick, oddly enough, later on, his last TV appearance in Cleveland was actually introducing Channel 19. And he came on as sort of like the spokesman for Channel 19. Now, the thing about Channel 19, and this is in the next book, they decided they're going to have a big kickoff event. So Pat McCormick, did all the promos and things like that. And 4 months later, they decided, let's have a real big event for all of our advertisers. So they said, we need just a great comedian. Let's get Pat McCormick back here. Well, he was busy. But the general manager said, I heard about this new comedian. I saw him on Letterman. So they called up his manager, Helen Kushnick, and they said, we want to get Jay Leno. And they said, he's pretty expensive. He's going to want $10,000. And they said, we got 5. And they said, he'll do it. So he showed up. And Jay shows up, this is 1986, before he's on the Tonight Show. And he says, well, how long do I have to go out and perform? They said, well, we got Alex Bevan, about 45 minutes, because people want to eat. He says, I got 5 hours of material. They said, well, play it by ear. He came out and did a 2-hour concert. $5,000 for Jay Leno. A year or two later, they said, that guy was great. We're having a sales meeting. Can we get him back? They called him up. They said, $30,000. But there were some great comics that came out of Cleveland. One name that people might not remember, I'm glad you brought up Jack, because it's Jack Hanrahan. Now, Jack Hanrahan worked for Laugh-In. And he had started out here at WERE and some other stations. And Hanrahan went out to the West Coast, and he was writing for a bunch of different series. And he was working with Laugh-In, and they said, we need a city we can hang on to. And it was Buffalo. Buffalo just had it all. There, the weather, nothing was good about Buffalo. And they're thinking about jokes, and Hanrahan came up with something. They said, don't listen to Hanrahan, he's from Cleveland. Cleveland. The Cleveland joke started with a Cleveland guy. Well, sadly, Hanrahan had a great career, got into some drugs and alcohol, some wild partying. He ended up back here with nothing. In fact, they found all of his stuff in a locker, a bus locker, in Los Angeles. And he was living on the streets here. Mind you, this guy was doing very well. His family, they contacted his family. Luckily, some people came forward, and Jack Riley helped him out. They got him in an apartment. He didn't have his false teeth. And they were able to fix him up for a while. So his last year or two was comfortable. But, I talked to a friend of mine out there, and he said, and I sent him all those articles, and he's doing very, very well for himself, our friend. And he said, we're all just 1 or 2 steps away from that. He says, Los Angeles is a different country. So, yes, other questions? No questions. I think we've confused them.
Well, let's
we
hope
did our
so.
best, yeah.
All right, so I'll do this real quick. These are, let's see if these folks are paying attention.
Okay, sounds good.
You mentioned Paul Thomas Anderson.
Yeah.
And he's the film director, of course. Can anyone tell me how is Paul Thomas Anderson connected to Cleveland? This is for an Austin Powers badge.
Oh, that's cool.
No, nobody. We have a guess here. Yes.
Lardy was his father.
That's right. Congratulations. You get a Austin Powers badge. Come on up and get that.
Well, not only that, but it was the weirdest thing because a few years ago when Paul was nominated, terrific, congratulations. When Paul was nominated for an Oscar, I was watching the nominations and they said, and for Best Picture, Paul Thomas Anderson, and what comes up on the screen? Goulardi. And it says Goulardi Films. That's the name of his film company.
Yeah, pretty good. There was a writer, comedian from Cleveland.
Yep.
Who streaked across the stage of The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson. Surprise Johnny. This clip is on YouTube. No cheating with your iPhones. Yeah. This is on YouTube. Who knows who that comedian was? Yes. I knew he would know that. Here you go. You also get an Austin Powers badge.
Terrific.
The two of you can be pals.
Congratulations.
All right.
There you go.
You can hand that to him.
There we go.
It was Pat McCormick.
And
it's on YouTube. It's censored, don't worry. And also the first day of Channel 19 is up there too. I encourage you all to go and look this up. And there's, I don't know how many clips, he's introducing it from Shaker Heights. He's out there, he's in a blazer, he looks very nice. So,
sure.
Do you have a trivia question that you want to ask people for a...
All right, sure, here's one. Remember the Captain Penny show? there was a professor on there. He's played by Jim Breslin. Now, Jim Breslin had also played a cowboy named Cowboy Jim, but he played a professor on the Captain Penny show. Does anyone know the name of that professor? I'll give you the first name. Professor Yule. Yule?
Take a guess. Shout it out. Anybody?
What's that? Yule what? No? No. Professor Yule Flunk.
Oh. Do you want the badge for that
No.
one? No? Okay.
All right, well, wait a minute. What about Woodrow the Woodsman? Could somebody name one of his puppets? Or what one of them was?
This is for a vintage Toyota badge.
That's a good one. I'll give you a hint. So who said elephant? It was an elephant, Voracious the elephant.
Come on up here.
There was
Did somebody
Max
get
the
it?
Alley Croc. There you go.
Did somebody get it?
Yes.
Oh, well, here. Okay. We'll put this over here. Very good.
With some hints.
Yeah.
With some hints. There you go.
Do you have another one you want to ask?
Let me see. Okay. I keep going back to Lynn Sheldon. Lynn Sheldon was just a wonderful guy. What was the instrument he played?
Ukulele.
There you go, ukulele.
All right.
We have a winner here.
This
and you
is
know what?
for-
He
okay.
was a master ukulele player too. He was that good. So
Wow.
what was that one for?
Okay. Who was that? Somebody.
Gentleman
okay.
there in the
Do you
possibilities.
Do you have a slide projector? All right, then wait. Let me switch this up. Are you afraid of sharp things? Do you need your house baby-proofed? No?
Just don't run with it.
Yeah. This thing, I don't know what this is, but it terrifies me because it's so sharp. So get it out of here. I'm just going to leave that there. And,
Well, there's prizes to pick up here. Huh?
Yes, there's prizes to pick up. Yeah, you can get the Toyota badge if you'd like that instead.
You know what? The
Oh,
thing
thank
about Lynn
God.
Sheldon with his ukulele playing, he had a Martin ukulele. I mean, this is an expensive ukulele, and he was just remarkable. And for years, I remember he and Woodrow had worked together for so long, and he just never took Clay Conroy's calls. And I said, well, wait, what's going on here? Why won't you take Clay's calls? I don't want to talk about it. So finally, I said, all right, look, I'm not. You can walk home as far as I'm concerned, but you're going to tell me why you won't talk to Clay Conroy. And he said, he stole my Lyle Ritz record. What? Who's Lyle Ritz? Well, all things come back to Cleveland. This guy is the king of ukulele in Hawaii. Of course, he's from Cleveland. He went to John Adams. And he was part of the Hollywood Wrecking Crew. So at any rate, I said, this is crazy. So I called Clay Conroy. I said, hey, you got a Lyle Ritz record? He said, sure. They don't make them anymore, of course. This is before CDs. You know, before CDs was on CD. I said, can I borrow it? And he said, sure you can. Come on over. So I go over there. He hands me this album. It says property of Clay Conroy stamped all over it. So I said, thanks for trusting me. He said, I don't trust you. Just bring it back. You know. So at any rate, I put it on CD. I even had the artwork shrunk down. I gave it to Lynn. I said, here's Lyle Ritz for you. And he said, wait a minute. Put it on track 4. I did, and he said, 3, 2, 1, pop. He said, that's mine, all right. So at any rate, he called me up that night. He says, I can't tell you how much we enjoyed this record again. We danced. Laura and I had a great time. I brought the record back. Lynn put out a book called Barnaby and Me. So he was at La Plaza, if you know where La Plaza is, over there in Beechwood. And who should come walking through but Clay Conroy? There's a big crowd here. This is not going to be nice. Lynn sees him. Their eyes lock. He stands up. He points at him and he says, ladies and gentlemen, there's my dear friend Clay Conroy. You come over and sign these books. And he said, he says, get over here. They had dinner and they were fine. Well, Clay's producer, because Woodrow came back for a while, we were always after these two guys just to get together, Clay Conroy and Lynn Sheldon. So we were talking about having a Christmas special. Channels 45 and 49 said, you produce it, we'll put it on. The guy with the production company said, listen, I've got Stan Hewitt Hall. We even had a script. We convinced these guys to do the special. The special was going to be at Stan Hewitt. It was just going to be a Christmas special with these two guys enjoying Christmas. At one point, Mr. Jingling would be on TV. And they'd be watching and say, geez, Christmas was great. You remember how we used to put the train up around the TV? And at that point, boom, Matt Penn found. Captain Penny's son would appear in his outfit and say, my dad could tell you about trains. They say, and the kids, the look on their faces, Miss Barbara, I know about that. Then, well, wait a minute, what about all the toys? Franz the toy maker, I could tell you about toys. And it was just going to be all the kids show hosts together again. And then at one point, there was going to be some Christmas carolers. They'd open the door, and there's Jan, and my wife Jan, and Laura Sheldon, and Clay Conroy's wife Marge, and all the puppets from Woodrow singing Christmas carols. This was going to be wonderful. I convinced Lynn we're going to do it. He said, great. He called me back 10 minutes later and said, Clay is too sick. And he died a few months later, and I told Lynn, I said, do you realize if we would have done that, it would have been the most famous Christmas special ever. We'd still be watching it. And he had this sad look on his face, and he said, I know. I know. And it was sad that those two guys could not have been back together. So, but they were just tremendous talents, and they just anticipated everything. Now, here's the interesting thing about Woodrow. Barnaby just had too many appearances. He couldn't keep up with all of them. So they said, you know what, we need somebody else to go out and do these appearances. So they said, let's get this new character. We'll call him Woodrow the Woodsman. So they auditioned a couple of guys, and it came down to two guys, Clay Conroy and Dick Goddard. And Goddard wanted to get back, and they said, well, you know what, he's known as a weather guy. Let's go with Clay Conroy. And sure enough, I mean, Clay Conroy became a legend. Now, here's something interesting. I just want to point this out. Lynn was from Norwalk, Ohio, and he was a few years older than Barbara Plummer. So when we were looking over this, telling him about the script, he says, oh, no, not Barbara Plummer. No, we can't do it. Why? And I'm afraid to ask him why. Who knows, Anyway, he said, no. I babysat her once. Because her father was a very prominent doctor. I said, so what? He said, I had to put her on the toilet. I said, you're 84 years old. She's not going to remember. He says, oh, she remembers. So we would have had to work around that. I said, well, you don't have to put her on a toilet, no. But at any rate, remarkable people that we've all grew up with.
I had the same problem in my office.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, exactly. Well,
happens all the time.
Exactly. Well, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Kabir. It's an honor to be with you.
Yeah,
especially.
Cleveland TV Tales.
Thank you everyone.
Right in the back. And June 25th, you're all invited back. On June 25th, we're going to be having a show about storytelling. And the guests will be, who's familiar with the Happy Dog up in Lakewood, hot dog place? Yeah. The Keep Talking group that's there every month for storytelling, they will be here, as well as a very esteemed writer from many hit TV shows, Lisa De Benedictis, who's actually here in the back right now.
Terrific.
So you can go swarm her, she's waving. She asked about the koala bears, and I don't know which show you mean. You said it's a show starring koala bears?
They were puppets.
They were puppets.
Well, they're puppets.
I don't know. MASH? Gosh, yeah. No, I don't know. Okay. But she will be here as well. So thank you very much, everyone, for coming. This will be on the library's website and Facebook and online, and you can relive it and everything. Thanks so much. And Michael,
thank you.
Thanks again.
It's a pleasure, my friend. Always a pleasure. Always a pleasure.
Thanks to the management and staff of the Hudson Library and Historical Society for their assistance in the production of this program and for providing the adult program series for the citizens of Hudson. For a DVD or Blu-ray copy of this or any HCTV program, contact Hudson Cable Television at 330-653-2500 or via email at hctv@hudson.oh.us.